Okay, we're going to go ahead and call to order the Planning Commission meeting tonight for Tuesday, February 5th. We have our full complement of commissioners here. We are going to start out today with the swearing in the oath of office for our new commissioner, Jay Thomas. So if you will step down, Mr. Thomas, we'll go ahead and take care of that right now. Okay, well, welcome. One more business item, just need to discuss if necessary, or get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Commissioner Luthi.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner England.
Second.
Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is our one and only public hearing for the night. That is the Peterson Commons subdivision at 8142 South, 4800 West. Preliminary subdivision plat and a PC zone. Peterson Development Company is the applicant. Mr. Barnes, are you here?
No, but Barrett Peterson.
You're up, sir.
Use the restroom, and the swearing in had already happened, so I apologize for being a little bit late. Barrett Peterson, Peterson Development, 225 South, 200 East, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84111. I appreciate your time this evening with the snow outside and everything that's going on out there with the crazy weather. I'm here to present Peterson Commons on behalf of our company. I mentioned I work with Peterson Development. Our home building arm is called Peterson Homes, and so jointly we'll be developing and building out this subdivision is our plan. Just to give you a little history, this Peterson Commons is part of a larger master plan community called Stone Creek that we've been developing over the last number of years. It probably started back in 1997, believe it or not. It was a 300-acre master plan, and this is kind of one of the last pieces of that master plan. It was zoned at one point office, and we marketed it as office for a long period of time, and nothing came to fruition. And with a lot of the changes in the economy with office, with the mobile worker and with the internet and things, not as much demand for office, and a lot of the office demand we think will be down there on 78th South and 56th West, where it's the main east-west connector in this area, where New Bingham Highway is not as much going to be the east-west connector over time. So that's a little bit of background on this piece. And also to just give some background, we came to the city council late last year. The governing document for this master plan community allowed us to request a change from office to residential. I think as much as 5 or 6 units to the acre. We requested single family lots, which is about 3 units to the acre. And this is kind of where we're at today. As is indicated on the screen, it's 5.2 acres. You can kind of see this. It's a little bit of an odd shape of piece of ground. You have the credit union out on the corner, and then a future commercial lot just to the south and west of the credit union that we've left there for future development. And then, of course, these 16 lots. The average size is just over 1/4 acre. Our intent is to blend with the surrounding neighborhoods to the north and west, and as you can see, 4 of the lots will actually face west and be part of kind of the neighboring community to the west, and then The other 11, sorry, I'm doing my math wrong, 12 lots will be kind of within that little cul-de-sac area with the cul-de-sacs that kind of turn. There's 2 or 3 little cul-de-sac bulbs there. That is a city street. I think it says that in your staff report. We did our best to come up with a layout. We went through numerous layouts, and we know it's a little bit unique the way that this turned out. And we've also had input from staff to make sure that there's homes that fit on these lots. A couple of them have pretty narrow frontages, and we've supplied that to staff. And in this PowerPoint this evening, we can go into a few of those in a moment. I also brought hard copies so you can look at some of those. Make sure I grab the right one. So yeah, if I can approach, I'll hand out these PowerPoints if that's okay. As far as any other added detail, these homes we would hope to market and sell in the high $300,000 range up into the low $400,000 range. We've tried our best to make these lots fit 3-car garage plans, and we think most, if not all of them, will allow a 3-car garage, which is generally desirable in that price point. And we intend to build on these lots, kind of keep a uniform character to the subdivision. We are both a developer and a builder. We've developed probably a couple thousand lots in West Jordan City in the last 20 years. So this is kind of our bread and butter. We build selectively when we feel like it makes sense to build. We're building a townhome community just in the same master plan called Parkside, which is over by 56th West and 78th South. And that's another ongoing project we have right now that's just getting started. So with that, I certainly would love to hear questions or open it up that way. And maybe towards the end of your discussion, I'd love to reserve a minute or two to respond to any concerns, if possible.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have one. On your one section where it's got the one way in and one way out,
Yeah.
parking, as far as vehicles on the street, as far as especially in some of the knuckle areas where it kind of is really narrow, what is your plan on addressing any parking issues as far as emergency vehicles trying to enter into your cul-de-sac and the turnabout?
That's a great question, and it is a concern that we've discussed with staff. It is a city street, and so I think it meets the turning radiuses for fire engines and things of that nature. I'm looking over here to Nate to confirm that. Addressed, I think, in our development plan, I'm not sure if it's in the staff report, is the idea that, as you have visitors over, you're going to need to have them park in your driveway. It's going to be a little tight in there. Certainly, there'll be some spillover probably to the adjacent uses, but I'm not sure the credit union or the other pad there would appreciate that. That may happen on weekends, for instance, but that is part of the challenge with this site. Is it's hard. It was hard to figure out the road layout. We played with a number of different iterations, but it does meet fire code and is a city approved street. It's not a private street, which I think staff did not want to see just because of some of the challenges with private streets.
So even though that's going to have an HOA, it'll be a public street? Okay. I just had concerns because if you put 2 vehicles, you're not going to get a fire truck in there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had one, maybe, but 2, you'll never get a fire truck in there.
If 2 are parked on the street, is that what you're saying?
Right. On opposite sides. I came from the fire service, so that's kind of.
So you would know better than I, but we have we've talked about these things, and certainly the residents would need to park responsibly that way. So.
Which, if you had the setbacks, which I do believe you said was 20 feet or 24 feet setbacks on the garages.
Yeah, I have that in here somewhere. I'm going to turn over to
26 feet.
26 feet.
Okay. And something I forgot to mention that I wanted to make sure I brought up with our planners, we have asked, and the staff is cooperative on this point, to have side yards of 5 and 7.5 feet on these lots, alternating. And that's typical of something in a planned community of this nature. That allows us to try to get more of these plans that fit 3-car garages. And we've done that recently in a couple of developments in the Highlands Master Plan to the west of here. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and reserve you some time after the public comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. This is noticed as a public hearing, so if anybody has, oh, no, before we do that, let's go to the staff. Hold off on the public notice.
Thank you. Members of the Planning Commission, as Mr. Peterson noted, this project is part of the Stone Hollow Plan Community. This came before the Planning Commission, or the preliminary development plan did come before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did have a chance to take a look at that, and then they forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council to approve the amendment to the preliminary development plan and the land use map. Because this is a planned community, you do have the ability to modify or change building setbacks so that it works for that particular area, for the layout of the streets, lot configurations, those things. The lots are fairly narrow, but Mr. Peterson has indicated and they've shown in their presentation that they can get homes on those lots. They've requested that the side yards be modified so that they could get the larger homes on those lots. The proposed density is roughly three dwelling units per acre. Back when the Stone Creek development plan was approved, that was back in 2009. It says if Stone Hollow Area E is converted from light office to residential lots, the area will be developed at a rate of no less than 2.7 units per acre and no less than 2.7 units per acre and no more than 5.1. So it's right in the middle of where that approved preliminary development plan states. Again, the access is, I'm just going to forward here through a couple of slides. I think you've already seen that. The zoning on the property, as was indicated, there's going to be 16 lots. There'd be a couple of knuckles on this public street with the turnaround at the end. These lots here along Copper Canyon Way will face onto Copper Canyon Way. There's 4 lots on that street. So we've looked at this. It complies with the zoning criteria. We don't see any real issue with the layout of the subdivision or the setbacks that have been recommended. So we recommend approval of the preliminary subdivision subject to those conditions that are noted in your staff report.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Hatch.
Thank you, Chair. Back to what Commissioner Thomas was saying on the street parking. What is the width of a city street, just standard? Is it 30 feet?
It's usually a 50-foot
50
right-of-way
okay.
with 30 feet from back of curb to the back of curb. So the actual paved distance is 25.
25 feet, okay. I live on a private street, and we have that issue with if there are 2 cars parked side by side, getting a vehicle down, but you can always get a vehicle down. So I think as long as the developer is sensitive to that issue and the residents obviously understand that concern as well, I think it will work. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Badon.
Here we go. Standard setback in this zone is 8 feet. I'm sorry, side yard is 8 feet, correct?
No, in the planned community zoning district, it's up to the planning commission to set that. The 8 feet was just what they had initially recommended on
Okay,
their
thank you.
plan. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, now we'll go ahead and open up the public meeting. If you have anything you'd like to say about this item, please come forward now and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Robert Kessler. I live on 8059 South Copper Canyon Way, just around the corner from these proposed lots. And I don't have a lot to say. I came to the city council meetings and I've stated some concerns. My main concern is the road design and concern for children. The price point that they've indicated, these are going to be bought by young families, and they'll have lots of kids in these cul-de-sacs. And a concern of mine would be trash pickup, snow plows, and delivery trucks. It's a tight corners. There will be cars parked on the street. I live down on Copper Canyon Way. We all have big driveways. There's still cars all over the street. There's FedEx vans that people work with. They park on the street. So my biggest concern is just the street design, that it takes care and makes people safe. Also the proximity to the corner. As we increase traffic in this main intersection at New Bingham Highway is a concern of mine too. The distance from there up, people coming out trying to get to the elementary school in the morning, that's a very busy intersection. So I hope the Planning Commission will look at that and that the developer will consider that as well in their design. I'm not against this development. I look forward to homes being there rather than the weeds. I just hope that we have a safe, nice addition to our wonderful neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring this back to the Planning Commission for discussion. If we want to hold off for a second, Ray, do you want to go ahead and just really quickly address, or maybe Nate can do this, the questions and the concerns that Mr. Kessler had? Specifically as he talked about the trash, the snow removal, delivery trucks. We've talked about the fire trucks.
Well, as we review this from an engineering point of view, we're looking at the geometry and the size of the road. The reason it looks a bit weird is because the straight legs are so short. The cul-de-sac is a standard size. The knuckles on the two 90-degree bends are actually larger than typical knuckled streets. So that actually gives you a little bit more curb line than you would get from a typical subdivision. So geometrically, it meets our standards. I think that is a valid concern. I'd hate to be a garbage truck driver and have to go in there and pick up the stuff and then maneuver and get back out, especially if there's cars parked. I personally live in a cul-de-sac, and I've got 3 adult kids and 5 cars and about 20 feet of curb space. So, and my neighbor's the same way. So, you know, we all know where to put our cans, and it's where the garbage truck driver wants them. And if we don't put them in the right spot, then we get a note on our can. Yeah, it's going to be tight. That was my biggest concern reviewing this, is just, you know, the number of lots for the size of it. It is tight, but it does meet our standards.
And then he also, he also talked about the traffic. It's 12 lots that are going to be emptying into that intersection. I can't imagine it's too significant of an impact, but do you want to?
So we're talking about the 11 lots or 12, whatever, that are in the little bendy road. That the driveway going in there, it's actually set farther back than I think the one that goes into the credit union. Their traffic engineers reviewed it. He's, you know, he doesn't find any violation. You see, there's side roads that enter main roads all throughout the city, and the spacing's not out of the ordinary.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answered the question.
Mr. Peterson, did you have anything to add, or did Nate take care of that for you?
There we go. Thanks, Julie. The only thing I would add is, and you'll see other projects we will be bringing forward in the next year or two. Density is always a hot button issue. We didn't choose to push the density issue on this one. I mean, it sort of lends itself to like a townhome development site, but we chose not to do that and fight that fight with the city, because right now townhomes are pretty much, you can't do those in the city, right? But you can see as you get more and more dense on pieces like this, they lend themselves to townhome or more cluster developments of very small single family. We didn't go that route, but I guess I'd just say those problems are going to exist at 3 units to the acre on this side or at 10 units to the acre. We chose the 3 units to the acre, but our valley's only getting more dense. So these issues of delivery trucks, they're real issues, but I think they're workable and solvable, as Nate's talked about. Certainly anybody living in a cul-de-sac needs to be aware that, there's sight lines and backing up and kids. Cul-de-sacs have some challenges to them. You're never going to have a perfect design of a neighborhood, but we've tried our best here. And again, we tried to sort of pick our battles with the city as far as the density issue. And on that level, I think it's a fair proposal. So appreciate your questions and your input. That's probably all I have, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, discussion? Commissioner Green.
The one thing that I have a little bit of concerns with parking, because I live on a cul-de-sac and I know what it's like because you can't park parallel and you always park nose in just to get more cars in your neighborhood. I have the same problem that you do. I have 4 adults and 5 cars and a partridge in a pear tree on my car, and we end up putting the garbage cans in a different place on the cul-de-sac and everything else. So I can appreciate those. Overall, though, that doesn't stop us from approving this on this plan, at least what I don't see. The one thing that I really do like about this plan is that the average size lot's over 12,000 feet. And what we've tried to do over and over again is encourage larger lots in the city. And rarely do we get somebody that comes in and says, let's put in 16 larger homes. Most of the time, like what you mentioned, Mr. Peterson, and somebody's trying to put in 20 units per acre, and I could just see trying to put 100 units on this piece of property and then see what happens to the intersection. So, and with the plan development, we could have some really strange things go on here. So, I think I like the idea that we've got the 16 lots, that they're all more than a quarter acre. They're all 12,000 feet. I have a slight concern, and it goes to the cul-de-sac design, obviously, is that they're narrow at the front, and so people have a real backyard. You're going to have some 7.5 foot setback from your neighbor, and I can't stand the 50 or the 20 that I have. But hey, I think that people are going to go into this buying this neighborhood, knowing what the setback is and being able to see those, and I think we're going to be okay.
Commissioner Luthi.
While the L-shaped is rather odd, or Z-shaped, I guess, is rather odd, as long as it meets the city standards, I don't think there's anything that we can do as far as pushing forward concerns on that. So I'm on board with that. I think that a lot of these lots, the knuckles and the cul-de-sacs are big winners because your backyard becomes huge. Even if you're on a quarter acre lot, you feel like you're on a third of an acre because it's all backyard. So I'm for it.
Commissioner Hatch.
I'll make a motion if
Please.
we're all okay with that. Based on the findings set forth in the staff report, I move that the Planning Commission approve the preliminary subdivision plat for the Peterson Commons subdivision located at 8142 South, 4800 West in the PC zoning district with the conditions listed on page 2 of the staff report.
Commissioner England.
Second.
Any discussion to the motion? Mr. Garner.
They're asking for a modification to the setbacks on what the plan, to 7.5 to 5.
Oh.
So if we could just note that, I don't know if you need
Does
if
it
we
need
could
an
just
official
note
condition?
that that's what the planning commission's approved, then.
I'll amend my,
Okay,
to adjust the setbacks to 7.5 and 5?
Commissioner England, you okay with that?
Yes, and those are alternating, correct? Yes.
Okay, now we have a good motion. Any further discussion to the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. That brings us to the conclusion of our meeting tonight. Commissioner Green.
I have one question for the city, and maybe this may help us out in the, if you recall last meeting, we had some discussions where we had a hard time pointing out on the screen. And I'm wondering if the city couldn't break down and buy a couple of lasers that we have up here on the podium so that if we really want to point out something, we can point it out and actually, after we had those discussions last week, it was like, why don't we have some lasers up here so we can actually point and talk about the stuff on the screen and everybody see what we're talking about?
so, I recommend to Scott, Julie, and suppose we have the budget for that. I think if we buy them for the planning commission, as long as you keep that in your possession, because if you leave it there, it's gonna walk off, but as long as it walks off with you and you're willing to bring it to every meeting, I'll bring that up to Scott, because it is a budgetary issue, but I don't think they're expensive at all, but that's a good point, and so, but I would rather, Duncan, is that a problem if we just assign that to the planning commission to be in their possession, so?
It should be fine, as long as we just, maybe Julie just tracks those as to which planning commissioner maybe is assigned to have it at any given point in time.
Can't we just get like two and then just pass them back to Julie and she can
Or,
keep
yeah,
them
or
in her
Julie could
desk?
just keep them.
I don't really wanna go
That's
home with
the
a
best.
laser pointer.
Yeah.
That would be a little bit easier for everybody, I think.
Then that's fine, because I
I'm
know,
worried-
I know from experience, if you leave them up on the, they're gonna
Yeah.
walk off, and so.
And the only other concern I would have is I think it's a great idea, but I still think it's good to help Julie create a good record. And even though the minutes are the main part of the record, it's still good to have a good voice recording. That if people, as they're pointing to the screen, still describe it so that if someone couldn't see it, they could still hear it and understand what it is. So you might point to the screen but still say on the north side or whatever it might be, would be my recommendation.
Perfect. I entertain a motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.